November 3rd, 1943. HMS Starling, 30 miles west of Cape Finisterre. The hydrophone operator's hand freezes mid-gesture. Through his headphones, cutting through the Atlantic's endless static, comes a sound that doesn't belong, the rhythmic pulse of diesel engines, distant but unmistakable. A U-boat, running submerged, thinking itself invisible in the cold Spanish waters. Captain Frederick Johnny Walker is in the operations room within seconds. He's already sunk 8 submarines this year, more than any other anti-submarine commander in the Royal Navy. He knows the dance. The U-boat commander down there, perhaps 2,000 yards ahead, believes he's safe. The destroyer is too close for long-range sonar tracking, yet too far for traditional depth charge attack. There's a gap, a blind spot where submarines have always found sanctuary. Except HMS Starling doesn't fight like other destroyers. Mounted on her foredeck, replacing the forward gun turret, sits a weapon the U-boat captain has never encountered. 24 spigot mortars arranged in 4 rows of 6, angled outward like the quills of a hedgehog. In 90 seconds, one of 2 things will happen. Either Walker's sonar operators will lose contact, and the U-boat will slip away into the vastness of the Atlantic, or those 24 projectiles will rewrite everything German submariners think they know about survival. The mathematics of submarine warfare in 1943 follow brutal, immutable logic. A Type 7 U-boat, the workhorse of the Kriegsmarine, measures 220 feet long and 20 feet wide. Its pressure hull, constructed from welded steel plate 3/4 of an inch thick, can theoretically survive depths of 750 feet. Theoretically. In reality, boats pushed past 600 feet begin experiencing what crews call the creaking death hull, plates flexing, rivets weeping, every surface groaning under pressure that would crush a man's skull in seconds. For 3 years, U-boat commanders have exploited a fundamental weakness in Allied anti-submarine warfare. Destroyers hunt submarines using ASDIC, the British sonar system that sends acoustic pulses through water and listens for echoes. The system works beautifully at medium range, detecting submarines from hundreds to thousands of yards. But physics creates a fatal flaw. Sound travels through water at approximately 4,900 feet per second. When a submarine comes within 200 yards of a destroyer, the time between the outgoing ping and the returning echo collapses into what operators call the instantaneous echo. The submarine's echo merges with the original pulse. The destroyer goes deaf. Traditional depth charge tactics require the attacking ship to pass directly over the submarine's position before rolling charges off the stern. During that final approach, during those critical seconds when the destroyer crosses above its target, sonar contact disappears entirely. The submarine becomes invisible. U-boat commanders know this. They've been trained at the submarine school in Pilot to exploit this blind spot with sharp course changes at high speed. The destroyer passes overhead, depth charges explode at preset depths, and by the time the water settles enough for sonar to function again, the U-boat has turned 90 degrees and crept away at silent running speed. The tactic has saved hundreds of boats, killed thousands of Allied sailors. Until now. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The Hedgehog mortar changes the fundamental equation of this underwater duel. Developed between 1940 and 1942 by the Royal Navy's Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, a group informally known as the Wheezers and Dodgers for their unconventional engineering approaches. The weapon represents a solution to a problem that conventional naval thinking had declared unsolvable. The core innovation isn't technical complexity, it's operational simplicity married to physics. Each Hedgehog projectile weighs 65 pounds, 7.2 inches in diameter, 31 inches long. The warhead contains 35 pounds of Torpex, a British explosive compound 42% more powerful than TNT. But the truly revolutionary element is what doesn't happen. The projectiles don't explode at preset depths like depth charges. They don't detonate based on timers or pressure sensors. They explode only on contact, only when steel meets steel. The implications of this single design choice cascade through every aspect of anti-submarine warfare. When a destroyer drops depth charges, whether they hit or miss, they explode. 26 depth charges detonate in rapid succession, each creating a massive underwater shockwave, churning the ocean into a cauldron of noise and turbulence. For 15 to 20 minutes afterward, sonar is useless. The water roils with disturbed thermoclines, suspended sediment, dying fish, and the residual energy of multiple explosions. The submarine, if it survived, uses that acoustic blindness to escape. With Hedgehog, silence means failure. If no explosions echo through the water, the destroyer knows immediately the attack missed. More critically, sonar contact remains perfect. The water stays clear. The submarine stays tracked. The destroyer lines up another attack without losing a single second of sonar data. The weapon fires ahead, not astern. This seemingly simple change solves the blind spot problem entirely. HMS Starling's Hedgehog launcher can fire, while the submarine remains 200 yards away, still well within ASDIC range. The sonar operator maintains contact through the entire attack sequence. No blind spots. No gaps. No escape. The launcher itself evolved from earlier weapons developed by Lieutenant Colonel Stuart, Blacker of the Royal Artillery. Between the wars, Blacker had pioneered the spigot mortar concept for infantry use. Instead of launching projectiles from tubes, his design used fixed-rod spigots that fit into hollow tails on the bombs. The propellant charge was built into the launcher, not the projectile. This allowed a single weapon to fire different-sized warheads by simply changing the projectile weight. Major Millis Jefferies, commanding the Ministry of Supply's Experimental Weapons Section, known as MD-1C, recognized the naval application. His team adapted Blacker's spigot mortar into a shipboard weapon, adding refinements that transformed a promising concept into an operational submarine killer. The prototype underwent sea trials aboard HMS Westcott in May 1941. Initial tests in Liverpool Bay, conducted against a known shipwreck, proved the concept worked. By November 1942, 100 ships carried Hedgehog launchers. Yet for months, the weapon system struggled to live up to its promise. Initial success rates hovered around 5%, barely better than conventional depth charges. The problem wasn't the weapon, it was confidence and training. Escort commanders, raised on depth charge doctrine, viewed Hedgehog with skepticism. When Hedgehog attacks failed silently, when no explosions marked the attack point, crews assumed they'd missed and switched back to familiar depth charge tactics. They didn't understand that silence meant merely to try again, that maintaining sonar contact through a failed attack was itself a tactical advantage. The turning point came in early 1943 when DMWD sent technical officers to Londonderry, the Royal Navy's primary escort base in Northern Ireland. These officers didn't lecture on theory. They shared combat data from successful attacks. They showed escort commanders exactly how Hedgehog attacks that maintained sonar contact led to kills on second or third attempts. They demonstrated how the lack of depth charge turbulence made follow-up attacks almost trivially easy compared to conventional warfare. The success rate began climbing immediately. By late 1944, Hedgehog attacks achieved a 35% kill rate. Compare that to depth charges, a 1.3% success rate from over 5,000 attacks. The weapon's firing sequence takes less than 2 seconds. The launcher has 4 cradles, each holding 6 spigots. The projectiles fire in pairs, staggered by 1 to 2/10 of a second. The timing is calculated precisely. Higher trajectory spigots fire first, flatter trajectories fire last. All 24 projectiles enter the water simultaneously, about 200 yards ahead of the ship. They sink at 23 feet per second. At that rate, a projectile reaches 200 feet depth in under 9 seconds. A U-boat at its operational depth has no time to react. The projectiles land in a circular pattern roughly 130 feet in diameter. A Type 7 U-boat measures 220 feet long. If the destroyer's position data is accurate to within 60 feet, multiple projectiles will impact the submarine. The pattern covers the target zone like a net. One hit is usually sufficient. 2 or 3 hits guarantee destruction. Korvettenkapitän Hans-Joachim Schwantke, commanding U-43, filed the first German report, describing what submariners came to fear more than any other weapon. December 1942, Bay of Biscay, running on the surface to recharge batteries. The Matox radar detector gave no warning. Searchlights blazed from directly overhead. Depth charges bracketed the diving boat. The attack came from an aircraft that appeared as if materialized from darkness, Schwantke wrote in his war diary. We were blind. The Matox gave no alarm. Only luck saved us. We heard the bombs falling and crash-dived with seconds to spare. But Schwantke's experience with aircraft, radar was merely prelude. The real revolution was happening on surface ships, and it involved weapons that didn't rely on luck or near misses. It relied on direct contact with the submarine's hull. Inside a Type 7 U-boat, normal operating conditions are already beyond what civilian minds can imagine. 44 men share 220 feet of steel tube. The air smells like diesel fuel, unwashed bodies, bilge water, and the sharp tang of battery acid. Temperature varies from 40 degrees in the North Atlantic to over 100 degrees near the equatorials. Humidity approaches 100%. Condensation drips constantly from every metal surface. There are no showers, no laundry. Men sleep in bunks, stacked 3 high, sharing mattresses with the watch crew. You sleep when someone vacates the bunk for their watch duty. Personal space consists of whatever you can fit in a small locker. The toilet is a complex valve system that requires training to operate. Flush it incorrectly at depth, and the pressure differential can spray raw sewage throughout the compartment. This happened multiple times. Veterans can identify which boat they served on by smell alone. This is normal. This is acceptable. This is what 44 men endure for 8-week patrols hunting Allied shipping. But when a destroyer gains sonar contact, when the hydrophone operator hears propeller beats closing on your position, when the captain orders silent running and the boat goes deep, normal becomes nightmare. The captain orders depth. The dive control room responds. The boat angles down, past 150 feet, past 200, settling at 250 feet. The pressure hull creaks. Small pops and groans echo through every compartment as the steel compresses. Every man knows these sounds are normal, knows the boat is rated for 750 feet, knows the hull can take far more punishment. Every man also knows boats that went deep and never came back. Knowledge doesn't stop fear. Silent running means exactly what it sounds like. Every non-essential system shuts down. Electric motors only, minimum speed, no talking. No movement unless absolutely necessary. Men communicate with hand signals, with nods, with eye contact. Even breathing becomes conscious, shallow, quiet, controlled. The temperature rises immediately. With ventilation systems offline, with electrical systems generating heat, with 44 human bodies producing warmth, the internal temperature climbs. 50 degrees becomes 60, becomes 70. Men start sweating despite the cold outside the hull. The air grows thick, heavy, harder to breathe. Carbon dioxide levels rise. Time distorts. Minutes feel like hours. The crew waits for sounds they hope never to hear, the high-pitched ping of active sonar, getting louder, getting closer, the sound of destroyer propellers overhead, the splashes as depth charges hit the water. With traditional depth charges, you hear them. Incoming. That's almost worse than the explosion itself. 26 impacts, one after another, hitting the water above you. You count them. You can't help counting them. Each splash is a depth charge that will explode somewhere near your boat. Then comes the waiting. Depth charges don't explode on impact. They sink to preset depths 200 feet, 250, 300. You don't know which depth they're set for. You just know they're sinking toward you, and there's nothing you can do except wait. The first explosion arrives like the fist of God punching the hull. The boat shudders. Lights flicker or die entirely. Cork insulation breaks free from the overhead and rains down like toxic snow. Loose objects become projectiles. Men grab for handholds. The shockwave passes through the hull, through the water, through human tissue. It feels like being kicked in the chest by a horse while someone simultaneously boxes your ears. But you're alive. The charge exploded too far. Away, or too deep, or too shallow. Then the second explosion comes. And the third. 26 depth charges create 26 individual hammer blows against the hull, each one a lottery ticket for death. Most miss. The ocean is vast. Submarines are small. Depth charge patterns are guesswork refined by experience and luck. A near miss at 30 feet will crack welds and spring hatches. A direct hit means instant death. The pressure hull ruptures. The ocean floods in at crushing force, and 44 men die before their brains can process what happened. But most attacks fail. Most U-boats survive. The tactic works because survivors teach the next generation. They pass down the doctrine drilled into every commander at Pillow when the destroyer closes. When sonar contact is certain, go deep and go quiet. Use the blind spot. Make sharp course changes during the final approach. Evade during the depth charge run when sonar is useless. Escape in the confusion after the attack when turbulence blinds the enemy. This doctrine saved hundreds of boats, thousands of men. Every U-boat commander knows it works. Every U-boat commander is about to discover it no longer does. HMS Starling maintains sonar contact as the range closes. 2,000 yards becomes 1,800, becomes 1,600. The U-boat ahead, later identified as U-305 under Captain Lieutenant Rudolf Barr, is running submerged at periscope depth, probably preparing to surface once clear of the patrol zone. Barr doesn't know he's being tracked. His hydrophone operator hears nothing unusual. The destroyer's approach is slow, deliberate, producing minimal noise. Standard doctrine says a destroyer at this range poses no immediate threat. You can dive, go silent, creep away. Except Starling isn't following standard doctrine. At 1,000 yards, Captain Walker orders the Hedgehog crew to prepare for attack. The launcher, mounted forward of the bridge, rotates slightly to starboard based on sonar, bearing data. The cradles angle up at roughly 45 degrees. Each spigot holds a loaded projectile, 65 pounds of steel and torpex, armed and ready. At 800 yards, Walker gives the order. Fire. The Hedgehog launches with a sound like tearing canvas amplified 100 times. 24 projectiles arc through the air in rapid sequence, their trajectories calculated to converge 200 yards ahead. From the U-boat, if anyone were watching through a periscope, it would look like a firework display. 24 trails of propellant smoke, 24 dark objects arcing through the sky. But nobody is watching. Nobody knows death has been fired. The projectiles hit the water in a pattern roughly 130 feet across. They sink immediately, 23 feet per second, fins stabilizing their descent. No splash disturbs the sonar picture. Contact remains perfect. The sonar operator tracks U-305's bearing, watches for any course change, any indication. The submarine detected the attack. Nothing. Barr continues his course, unaware. The projectiles sink through 100 feet, 150, 200. At 230 feet, travelling at 23 feet per second, the leading projectiles cross the depth where U-305 cruises. The contact fuses are simple but reliable. On impact with a hard surface steel, rock, coral, a spring-loaded firing pin drives into the detonator. 35 pounds of torpex explodes in direct contact with the pressure hull. The shock is catastrophic and instantaneous. A Hedgehog projectile punching through the pressure hull creates a hole roughly 3 to 4 inches in diameter. At 230 feet depth, water pressure is approximately 100 pounds per square inch. Water enters the hull at roughly 400 gallons per minute through that single hole. 400 gallons per minute means the submarine floods with over 26 tons of water in the first 60 seconds. But the flooding is secondary. The primary killer is pressure equalization. The instant water breaches the pressure hull, atmospheric pressure inside the boat begins rising toward ambient water pressure. 100 psi, the temperature follows. Water at 230 feet depth is cold, perhaps 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But when compressed air heats, temperature rises proportionally to pressure. As internal pressure climbs toward 100 psi, temperature inside the compartment rises toward 200 degrees, then 250, then 300 degrees. Within 90 seconds, the air inside the submarine is hot enough to sear lungs with every breath. Men die of thermal burns to their respiratory systems before drowning becomes a factor. Those who survive the initial heat face worse. The boat loses buoyancy control immediately. Down angle increases. The submarine begins sinking below its crush depth. As it sinks deeper, pressure increases, flooding accelerates, temperature rises even higher. At 400 feet, the pressure hull begins to fail structurally. Rivets pop like gunshots, seams tear open, additional compartments flood. At 500 feet, catastrophic failure occurs. The hull implodes. The submarine compresses like a beer can crushed by a hydraulic press. Every compartment floods simultaneously in less than 2 seconds. Death is instantaneous. Sonar operators aboard HMS Starling hear the explosions clearly. Not one, not two, at least 4 distinct detonations, each followed by the unmistakable sound of a submarine's pressure hull beginning to collapse. Secondary sounds follow. Compressed air escaping from ruptured tanks, the metallic shriek of steel tearing. Then the final implosion, a single massive underwater concussion as U-305 collapses entirely. Debris begins rising to the surface within minutes. Oil spreads in an expanding slick. Wood fragments from interior fittings. Personal items, a boot, a watch, a photograph. 44 men dead. Total elapsed time from firing to destruction is less than 45 seconds. The German Naval Command in Paris receives the loss report 3 days later when U-305 fails to make scheduled radio contact. Admiral Karl Dönitz, Commander-in-Chief of the U-boat force, adds another black pin to the situation map in the operations room. The 44th boat, lost in November 1943. The pattern emerging from these losses tells a story German intelligence struggles to comprehend. U-boats are dying in ways that violate everything commanders thought they understood about anti-submarine warfare. Traditional depth charge attacks follow predictable patterns. Initial contact, pursuit. The destroyer passes overhead. Explosions, chaos. The submarine escapes during the confusion. Except, increasingly, there is no confusion. There is no escape. Boats report destroyer attacks that maintain perfect sonar contact through the entire engagement. Attacks where the first pattern forces evasive action, but the second pattern follows immediately with no acoustic disruption between attempts. Most disturbing are reports that never arrive boats that simply vanish with no distress calls, no debris fields, no survivors. Korvettenkapitän Rudolf Bahr commanded U-305 through 4 previous patrols. He sank 11 merchant ships totaling over 46,000 tons. He survived depth charge attacks off Iceland, aircraft bombing in the Bay of Biscay, and a brutal 16-hour hunt by Canadian corvettes in March 1943. His experience meant nothing. His tactical skill meant nothing. He never knew what killed him. His crew never had time to react. This is what the Hedgehog has done to submarine warfare, transformed it from a contest of skill and luck into an execution. The weapon's effectiveness comes not from a single innovation, but from the compounding advantage of multiple design improvements working together. First, forward-firing capability eliminates the blind spot that allowed submarines to evade during the final approach. Second, contact fuses mean every miss is silent, preserving sonar contact for immediate follow-up attacks. Third, the high sink rate 23 feet per second gives submarines no time to detect and evade. Fourth, the circular impact pattern covers an area large enough that accurate sonar data translates directly into multiple hits. But perhaps most importantly, the weapon exploits a fundamental psychological weakness in submarine design: U-boats are built to withstand external pressure. The hull is engineered to resist enormous crushing forces from outside, but Hedgehog doesn't crush from outside. It penetrates. A single 3-inch hole at depth creates internal conditions that kill the crew before the hull fails structurally. The Kriegsmarine's response to this new threat comes too late and accomplishes too little. In January 1944, U-Boat Command issues tactical guidance to all commanders. New attack patterns detected. Enemy destroyers maintaining sonar contact through engagement. Recommend extreme depth immediately upon detection. Minimum 100 meters below standard operating depth. Avoid predictable evasion patterns. The guidance acknowledges the problem but offers no solution. Going deeper merely delays death. The projectiles can reach any depth a U-boat can survive. Avoiding predictable evasion means abandoning the very tactics that made escape possible against conventional weapons. German naval engineers propose modifications. Additional hull armor around critical compartments. Rubber coating to reduce sonar reflection. Installation of acoustic decoy launchers to confuse enemy sonar. None of these measures address the fundamental problem. You cannot armor a submarine against a weapon that needs only to puncture the hull at a single point. You cannot hide from sonar that maintains continuous contact. You cannot decoy a weapon that saturates the target area with 24 projectiles simultaneously. The statistical evidence becomes undeniable by mid-1944. From the period when Hedgehog entered widespread service in late 1942 through the war's end, Allied forces made approximately 268 Hedgehog attacks against U-boats. 47 resulted in confirmed kills, a success rate of 17.5%. By comparison, over 5,000 depth charge attacks achieved 85 confirmed kills, a success rate of 1.6%. The efficiency gap is even more stark when examining individual engagements. Depth charge attacks typically required multiple runs, sometimes continuing for hours, before achieving a kill or losing contact. Hedgehog attacks that resulted in kills averaged fewer than 3 firing patterns. Often, the first pattern scored sufficient hits to destroy the submarine immediately. The USS Eugene E. Elmore provides a textbook example of Hedgehog doctrine executed perfectly. May 29, 1944, approximately 200 miles southwest of the Azores. Elmore is part of Task Group 21.11, built around the escort carrier USS Block Island. The task group has been hunting U-549, a Type 9C boat commanded by Captain Lieutenant Detlev Krankenhagen, for 6 days without success. At 20:15 hours, 1 hour before sunset, Krankenhagen makes his move. U-549 fires 3 torpedoes at Block Island from approximately 650 yards. 2 find their target. The escort carrier begins sinking immediately. In the chaos of rescue operations, with Elmore's sister ships picking up survivors and 1 escort crippled by a torpedo hit, U-549 goes deep, running silent, believing it has escaped. It hasn't. USS Arons, stopped dead in the water to recover Block Island's survivors, has its engines shut down. In that silence, with no propeller noise to mask returns, the sonar operator picks up U-549 at bearing 275 degrees. The contact is solid. Arons' captain, Commander Morgan Harris, immediately vectors Elmore to intercept. Lieutenant Commander G.L. Conkey, commanding Elmore, acknowledges and increases speed. His destroyer escort is fitted with Type 144 sonar, extremely sensitive equipment with a normal detection range of 2,500 yards. Under ideal conditions, which these are calm seas, minimal ambient noise, a submarine running slowly to conserve batteries, the range extends past 3,000 yards. At 2100 hours, Elmore's sonar operator acquires U-549. The contact is deep, probably at or near test depth. 650 to 700 feet, well below the maximum setting for conventional depth charges. Krankenhagen believes this depth provides safety. He's correct about depth charges. American Marks 6 and 7 have maximum settings of 600 feet. Even the newer Mark 9 tops out at 600 feet. But Elmore doesn't carry depth charges as her primary anti-submarine weapon. She carries Hedgehog, and Hedgehog has no depth limit. The projectiles will sink until they hit something or reach the ocean floor. Elmore's Type 144 sonar is integrated directly into the Hedgehog fire control system. The sonar data feeds continuously to the fire control computer, which calculates bearing, range, target motion, and impact point. The system accounts for the destroyer's speed, the submarine's estimated speed, the projectile's ballistic trajectory, and their sink rate. When all variables align, the fire control solution goes green. Conky orders the first pattern fired at 21:18 hours. 24 projectiles arc ahead, hit the water, begin sinking. Sonar maintains perfect contact throughout. No explosions. The pattern missed. Elmore's sonar operator reports the submarine has not changed course or depth. Krankenhagen either didn't hear the projectiles entering the water or doesn't recognize the sound as a weapon system. The fire control computer generates a refined solution based on the submarine's unchanged course. Second pattern fires at 21:23 hours. This time, multiple explosions follow within 15 seconds. At least 4 direct hits, possibly 6. The sonar operator reports the submarine's signature is changing propellers, slowing, depth control failing, the distinctive sounds of a pressure hull beginning to yield to external pressure. 30 seconds after the explosions, a massive secondary detonation echoes through the water. The submarine's batteries, flooded with seawater, have created a chlorine gas explosion that completes the destruction the Hedgehog projectiles began. U-549 and all 56 crew members are dead. Total time from first sonar contact to confirmed kill is 11 minutes. Compare this to typical depth charge engagements of the early war period. HMS Gladiolus attacks U-651 on June 29, 1941. The engagement lasts 6 hours. Gladiolus drops 117 depth charges before U-651 surfaces and scuttles. HMS Hesperus attacks U-191 on April 23, 1943. 8 hours, 350 depth charges, before the submarine surfaces and is sunk by gunfire. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The efficiency of Hedgehog attacks transforms anti-submarine warfare from a war of attrition into a war of annihilation. In the Pacific Theatre, USS England demonstrates the weapon's potential taken to its logical extreme. May 1944, the Philippine Sea. Japanese Admiral Soemu Toyoda establishes a submarine scouting line from Truk Island to Manus, attempting to detect American invasion fleets. 7 submarines are positioned at designated intervals: I-16, RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-116, and RO-117. Toyoda's plan is sound. Submarines are well-positioned, well-commanded, operating in familiar waters. What Toyoda doesn't know is that American codebreakers have read his deployment orders. Task Group 39.7, built around destroyer escorts USS England, USS George, and USS Raby, receives the submarine positions with remarkable precision. The hunt begins on May 19th. England makes sonar contact with I-16 and begins a methodical Hedgehog attack. 2 patterns miss. The third scores multiple hits. I-16 goes down with all hands. 6 days later, May 23rd, England detects RO-104 on the surface. The submarine crash dives, but England maintains contact and begins firing patterns. 4 attempts miss as the submarine maneuvers aggressively. On the 5th pattern, explosions. RO-104 destroyed. May 24th, RO-106. England's second Hedgehog pattern scores at least 3 hits. The submarine is lost with 49 crew. May 26th, RO 104, again, a clerical error. The submarine encountered is actually RO 105. Third pattern scores multiple hits. 53 crew dead. May 30th, RO 108. England makes a Hedgehog attack and scores 4 to 6 hits. 53 more crew lost. May 31st, RO 105 discovered actually RO 105 sister boat in the formation. 4 Hedgehog patterns. The fourth succeeds. Submarine destroyed. 6 submarines in 12 days, all killed by Hedgehog. The statistical impossibility of this achievement demonstrates what happens when superior technology meets precise intelligence. England's crew developed their attacks into a production line process. Detect, track, fire, assess, fire again if needed, confirm kill, move to next target. The rhythm became mechanical, almost routine. Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, later remarked that England's achievement would probably never be equalled in anti-submarine warfare. He was correct. No other ship, in any navy, has ever matched 6 submarine kills in 2 weeks, but England's success only magnifies the larger pattern. By late 1944, Hedgehog-equipped escorts are sinking submarines with industrial efficiency. 11 of the last 16 U-boat kills by U.S. Navy destroyers and destroyer escorts are achieved using Hedgehog or similar forward-throwing weapons. Inside the remaining U-boats, the psychological impact is catastrophic. Submarine warfare has always carried enormous risk. Depth charge attacks, aircraft bombs, mechanical failures, storms, every patrol was a dice roll with death. But those were honest dangers. A depth charge attack gave you a chance. You could evade, hide in thermoclines, outlast the attacker's patience. Skill and experience mattered. Luck played a role. With Hedgehog attacks, none of that applies. You're running submerged, believing yourself invisible, and suddenly multiple explosions tear through the hull. No warning, no chance to evade. Death arrives faster than human reaction time allows. The weapon doesn't just kill submarines. It kills the psychological framework that made submarine service bearable. Submariners understand their predators. Sharks hunting in the deep. That identity makes the danger acceptable. But Hedgehog inverts the relationship. Submarines become prey, and prey that cannot hide, cannot escape, cannot fight back. The interrogation reports from captured U-boat crews in late 1944 and 1945 reveal profound demoralization. Kapitänleutnant Hans-Joachim Schwantke, captured when U-43 was sunk in July 1944, told Allied interrogators that by mid-1944 every U-boat crew member understood most boats would not return from patrol. The question wasn't if you would die, but when and how. Oberleutnant Zursi Werner Henke, captured when U-515 was sunk in April 1944, described the tactical situation as hopeless. Allied aircraft detect us when we surface. Allied destroyers maintain contact when we submerge. We cannot attack without being detected. We cannot escape once detected. The war is lost. We are simply dying slowly. Henke's psychological state deteriorated during interrogation. Falsely accused of war crimes and threatened with execution, he attempted to escape from Fort Hunt prison facility on June 15, 1944. Guards shot and killed him during the attempt. The impact on German naval morale extended beyond individual crews. U-boat training schools struggled to maintain the psychological conditioning necessary for combat effectiveness. Instructors at Pillow taught tactics that had been obsolete for 2 years. They drilled cadets on evasion techniques that no longer worked against weapons the cadets had never heard of. New crews arrived at operational bases and encountered veterans whose 1,000-yard stares told them everything the official reports concealed. Of the approximately 40,000 men who served in U-boats during the war, roughly 30,000 died, a 75% casualty rate, the highest of any military service on either side of the conflict. And a significant portion of those deaths occurred in the war's final 2 years, when technological inferiority made every patrol a suicide mission disguised as military operations. Grand Admiral Dönitz knew. His operational staff knew. They understood the mathematics were unsustainable. But the strategic calculus offered no alternatives. Withdrawing U-boats from the Atlantic entirely would free Allied naval forces for other theatres, accelerating defeat on all fronts. Continuing operations meant losing boats faster than shipyards could replace them, but at least tied down Allied resources. The U-boat force became a strategic sacrifice, buying time for weapons development that might restore competitive balance. The Type 21 Electroboat represented Germany's most ambitious attempt at technological leapfrog. This revolutionary design featured streamlined hull, form, triple battery capacity for 17 knots, submerged speed more than double conventional boats, 6 bow torpedo tubes with hydraulic reload, allowing 18 torpedoes fired in under 20 minutes, and sophisticated sonar systems. Had Type 21s entered service in 1943 rather than 1945, they might have significantly extended the Battle of the Atlantic. But rushed production created severe quality problems. Of 118 boats constructed, only 4 were fully combat-ready before war's end. Only 2 conducted actual combat patrols. U-2000, 511, commanded by Korvettenkapitän Adalbert Schnee, departed on patrol April 30, 1945. On May 4th, Schnee detected a British cruiser task force and executed a perfect attack approach. The Type 21's superior underwater speed and silent running allowed him to reach firing position undetected despite Allied radar and sonar coverage. Schnee had the shot. Multiple cruisers within torpedo range. But Germany had announced surrender negotiations. Schnee surfaced and radioed his position instead of attacking. The war ended. In his post-war memoir, Schnee reflected on the bitter irony. We proved that day what the Type 21 could have achieved had it entered service a year earlier. But such demonstrations were meaningless. The Allies had already won through industrial capacity and technological innovation deployed years before. Our most advanced technology arrived when the war was already lost. The final U-boat kill of World War II in American waters exemplifies everything Hedgehog represented. May 6, 1945, 2 days before Germany's surrender, U-853 torpedoes, the collier Black Point off Point Judith, Rhode Island. 12 crew members die when the ship rolls over and sinks. The hunt begins immediately. Coast Guard frigate USS Moberly, destroyer escorts USS Atherton and USS Amick converge on the attack site. U-853, commanded by Oberleutnant Zur See Helmut Fromsdorf, goes deep and attempts to escape. It's the final combat of the war against Nazi Germany, and it follows the pattern established 3 years earlier when Hedgehog entered service. Atherton gains sonar contact at 23:43 hours. The submarine is at approximately 100 feet depth, lying motionless with propellers silent. Fromsdorf and his crew wait in the dark, breathing foul air that grows hotter by the minute, knowing that somewhere above them a destroyer is preparing to attack. The first Hedgehog pattern explodes at 23:48, multiple hits. The submarine shudders but holds. Fromsdorf has no time to react before the second pattern arrives. More explosions. Bubbles of air and oil rise to the surface. Atherton circles for 20 minutes, then fires a third pattern to ensure destruction. U-853 settles to the bottom at 130 feet depth. All 55 crew members are dead. The submarine lies there, still, a war grave protected under international law, a memorial to men who died in a war that had already ended for every practical purpose. The technical specifications and combat effectiveness of the Hedgehog mortar system represent only one dimension of its impact. The weapon's true significance lies in how it changed the fundamental nature of submarine warfare. Before Hedgehog, submarines were predators operating in a forgiving environment. Depth charges were dangerous but survivable. Skilled commanders could evade, escape, fight another day. After Hedgehog, submarines became targets in an unforgiving environment. One mistake meant death. Even no mistakes often meant death. The weapon's forward-firing capability, contact fuses, and integration with advanced sonar created a system where maintaining contact equaled achieving a kill given sufficient time and ammunition. The psychological transformation this created extended far beyond the U-boat force. Post-war submarine development, by every major navy, prioritized silence above all other characteristics. Soviet submarines received anechoic coating to absorb sonar pings. American submarines pursued ever quieter propulsion systems and machinery mounts. The arms race wasn't speed or depth or weapons. It was acoustic stealth. Because Hedgehog had proven a simple truth: a submarine that can be tracked will be killed. The weapon itself remained in service with the United States Navy well into the Cold War. Destroyer escorts built in the 1950s still carried Hedgehog launchers. The weapon was eventually replaced by more advanced systems: acoustic torpedoes, anti-submarine rockets, sophisticated sonar suites, but the fundamental principle Hedgehog established never changed. Forward-firing weapons that maintain sonar contact through the attack remain the foundation of anti-submarine warfare to this day. The Russian Navy's RBU-6000 rocket launcher, introduced in 1961, is a direct descendant of Hedgehog, firing 12 rockets in a similar forward-throwing pattern. Modern navies have largely replaced such weapons with homing torpedoes and standoff missiles, but the operational concept maintained continuous sensor contact through weapon engagement traces directly to lessons learned from Hedgehog combat effectiveness in World War II. The Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, the Wheezers and Dodgers who created Hedgehog from Lieutenant Colonel Blacker's spigot mortar concept, never received the public recognition they deserved. Their work remained classified for years after the war, but Allied submariners knew. They understood what Hedgehog represented, a weapon so effective that encountering it meant almost certain death, a weapon that made the submarine's natural advantages stealth, maneuverability, small size irrelevant when caught within sonar range. In German naval archives captured after the war, researchers found tactical reports filed by U-boat commanders in late 1943 and early 1944. These reports documented encounters with what they called Wabos new depth charges. The descriptions were telling. Explosions only when the destroyer achieved hits, no acoustic disruption between attack patterns. Attacks continuing with impossible accuracy. Some reports speculated about new fusing systems or improved explosives. Others suggested enhanced sonar guidance. None correctly identified the weapon they were encountering. German naval intelligence never fully understood Hedgehog's operating principle until after the war ended. They knew something new was killing their boats with unprecedented efficiency. They collected fragments and survivor testimonies. But the full picture, forward-firing contact-fused mortars integrated with continuous sonar tracking, remained hidden until Allied technical teams began briefing German officers during post-war debriefings. The casualty statistics tell their own story. From January 1943, when Hedgehog entered widespread service, through May 1945, when Germany surrendered, U-boat losses accelerated dramatically. January through May 1943 saw 95 boats lost. The remaining 7 months of 1943 saw approximately 142 more boats destroyed. In 1944, 241 U-boats were lost. In the first 4 months of 1945, before surrender, another 153 boats were destroyed. Not all these losses involved Hedgehog attacks. Aircraft bombs, conventional depth charges, mines, and accidents all contributed. But the weapon system that achieved a 17% kill rate from fewer than 300 attacks clearly punched far above its weight class. Every Hedgehog-equipped escort became a submarine killer of extraordinary lethality. The weapon didn't require exceptional crew skill or luck. It required only competent sonar operation and the patience to fire multiple patterns while maintaining contact. The final assessment must consider what Hedgehog meant to the men who died facing it. Captain Lieutenant Rudolf Bahr, commanding U-305 when Hedgehog projectiles tore through his boat's pressure hull, had no time to understand what killed him. The attack came faster than human perception allows. One moment, running submerged, apparently safe. Next moment, multiple explosions, catastrophic flooding, rising temperature, death. For the 44 men aboard U-305, death arrived so fast that fear likely never had time to form. Instant death is mercy compared to the alternative. Other boats, damaged but not immediately destroyed by Hedgehog hits, faced slower endings. A single penetration at depth starts flooding that cannot be stopped. As water enters, pressure rises, temperature climbs. Men die of thermal burns to their lungs before drowning. Those who survive long enough face the horror of watching depth. Gauges descend past safe limits as the boat loses buoyancy control. Past 600 feet, past 700. At some point, the hull begins failing. Rivets pop, seams tear. Men know what's coming and are powerless to stop it. The final implosion, when the hull collapses completely, ends their agony in a fraction of a second. This was the reality Hedgehog created. A weapon so effective that encountering it meant death delivered with industrial efficiency. A weapon that transformed submarine warfare from a contest of skill and courage into an execution, where the submarine crew's training, experience, and tactics no longer mattered. The only defense was avoiding detection entirely, and in 1943, with Allied radar, sonar, and signals intelligence all improving rapidly, avoiding detection was becoming impossible. The U-boat force died slowly, patrol by patrol, boat by boat, throughout 1944 and into 1945. The men who served in those boats knew they were unlikely to return. They sailed anyway, because duty demanded it, because Nazi ideology insisted surrender was weakness, because the strategic calculus required tying down Allied resources even at unsustainable cost. 75% of them died. Many died to Hedgehog projectiles fired from destroyers whose crews had been trained on the weapon's use only months earlier. Technology had overtaken human courage. Engineering had replaced tactical genius. In the cold mathematics of industrial warfare, this was inevitable. But for the men breathing their last in flooded submarine compartments 200 feet below the Atlantic's surface, mathematics offered no comfort. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.